Hello, and welcome to Mean Street News. Mean Street News is here to provide accurate news to help citizens effect change in their local government and beyond. Being nice is overrated. It is time to be real. I mean what I say, and I say what I mean. The time to step up and step in is now. So please come join me, Katie, over on Mean Street News to discuss Ohio politics and beyond. I hope to see you there. Hello, and welcome to Mean Street News. Mean Street News is here to provide accurate news to help citizens effect change in their local government and beyond. Being nice is overrated. It is time to be real. I mean what I say, and I say what I mean. The time to step up and step in is now. So please come join me, Katie, over on Mean Street News to discuss Ohio politics and beyond. I hope to see you there. Hello and good morning. I am Katie and welcome to Mean Street News. If you're new, if you are returning, thanks for coming back. Sorry, I meant to be on at 9, but then I got a phone call that I couldn't get out of, so I'm here now. I was going to start sex lies in county government if you have been here before, again, with the Tomlinson... Oh, it's my aunt. Hold on. With the Tomlinson timeline. However, after thinking about how I want to approach this, I have decided to start sex lies in county government with the Ohio State Auditor Investigation instead. And we're going to start back where we ended. I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a review about what I'm talking about if you're new here. If you're not, we are going to do an overview of the interviews, important facts of the interviews that were provided by the Ohio Auditor's Office. I put a records request in like a year ago for this investigation, and finally I have received those docs, which is why I've been kind of gone and really busy, because I've been going through those documents, adding them to my radio investigation, adding them to my Tomlinson timeline, putting facts together. And then I also had I don't even know, there was 12 hours or more worth of interviews I've had to listen to. So it's been a lot of work. But today we are going to start with Alan Close of Cleveland Communications, Inc. and David Moore, his first interview from June 2nd of 2022. I'm sorry, my aunt is texting me and I have to... Hold on one second. I'm sorry. It's my aunt. I can't ignore her. I'm going to cut this woman had a stroke. I'm going to cut her hair for my aunt, and I got to make sure that she knows my timeline's a little off. Okay. Anyways, sorry. So we are going to start with my RICO map. So for one, why should you care? Why should you care about Lorain County? Why should you care about this RICO case? Why should you care about the radio investigation? Honestly, why me as a citizen of Lorain County should I care at all? One, you should care because of the amount of tax dollars that have been wasted in this process. As of September of 2024, there was over $1 million of just attorney's fees. Now, when we get into, what else has been wasted tax dollar wise, we have the sheriff's office using, their hours, their wages that we pay instead of, investigating crime, investigating elected officials, which was not appropriate. We have corrupt sheriff's office, former. There's a new sheriff, and we don't know yet how that is going to go. But he is taking steps to look into certain things, which I will say I appreciate. But the previous administration was corrupt. They wasted taxpayer dollars on that to investigate elected officials. They interfered with our election here in Lorain County by going after the Lorain County prosecutor when he would not go after David Moore to try to convict him for rescinding this contract, him and Jeff Riddell, two other elected officials. We also have our state auditor's office and our attorney general not looking into public corruption when elected officials are informing them of that. We're going to see what they do with my investigation that will be sent to them next week, as well as outside Ohio agencies, which is why we're getting to this week. You guys haven't seen a lot of me. I have about 30 episodes so far on Mean Street News. That is going to change starting next week. You will see me here Monday, Wednesday, Friday. You will see me Monday afternoons, evenings, depending on my schedule. Wednesdays, you will see me in the morning, 8 a.m. sharp. And then Fridays, you'll see me either in the morning or afternoon, and I'll let you know that week how it's going to go. But Monday, Wednesdays, Fridays, I want you to come join me. We're going to be following the Ohio legislator. We're going to be continuing to cover Lorain County news. I'm going to be educating you all on education, how government works, operates. I have like a full schedule. I'm really excited. We're also going to go get into, stuff that's not covered by the mainstream media on Fridays. It's going to be my video day for you all. We're going to cover some Aspen Institute episodes. Really, we're going to get into education. That is one of my biggest passions. That's what my upcoming book is about. My first book. My second book is about the PSYOP I fell into, which is really interesting, but that won't be until later this year, which is what I'm working on now. I'm a crazy person, if you haven't noticed. Also, we're going to be looking to put up some great legislation in the future. So, but let me start with Lorain County and why you should, back to why you should care. Taxpayer dollars were wasted, misappropriation of tax dollar funds. When you hear lawsuit, like, oh, the commissioners are suing each other, it's so funny. No. That's our money that's being used to facilitate lawfare in this county. And it's even Joe Rogan, Josh Dubin on Joe Rogan that I brought up on previous talking about the Ohio 4, he brought up what happened with JD Tomlinson and how he got railroaded when he wouldn't play ball in the county. Now, JD is a whole different timeline. He's an extortion part of my RICO. But let's get into why I say RICO, okay? If you're new here, if you're not, I'm just going to do a really quick overview, and it's going to be painless, I promise. So I want to take you to, make sure this is sharing. Okay. Make sure you guys can see it so I'm not a crazy person. Sorry, it's me real quick. Text. Okay. I just want to make sure this is sharing and my screen's not looking all messed up. Okay, so here is my RICO map. Okay. You can see it. Okay, perfect. All right, I'm going to get rolling here. Okay. You see these people right here. Now, these are currently right here, Dave Moore, Jeff Riddell, all the blue thing. They are currently county commissioners, but previously we had before 2025, we had Commissioner Michelle Hong from 2020 to 2024, lost her election to Marty Gallagher, thank God, because if you all live here and have read the paper, you know it's been a mess here. So these two, before Jeff Riddell was elected in 2021, so just kind of ignore him, these two were commissioners with a Democrat, Matt Lundy, who was a commissioner previously. But there was a radio contract that was brought up, $6.4 million radio contract that was approached. Michelle Hung and her, not the 911 director, who was her paramour, had an affair with him before she was elected, was the deciding vote to hire this man at $72,000 a year. She and him colluded, and I am very confident in saying that now, colluded, and I have evidence to back it up, so sue me, colluded together to give this man, Alan Close, a $6.4 million radio contract. Now, these three used our safety forces and labor unions and private organizations to pressure the mayors of their city councils to buy into this 5 city radios, which is, their business, but then also decided to push Lorain County to all get in on one system, which would be Alan Close's system right here, Cleveland Communications. And we're going to hear his interview with the auditor's office today. When they first approached this, Dave Moore, our county commissioner, and I'm sorry if you guys are listening, but Dave Moore, and you can't see my map, but if you go on my site, you'll be able to see it. Dave Moore right here, he called this out from the beginning. He said this is corrupt. He's actually the one that approached the auditor's office with evidence of Michelle Hung's corruption. He pretty much shouted from the rooftops that this was corrupt. But when this contract, no big contract, came out, a month later, Michelle and Harry's, the 911 director's affair was exposed, and they were not happy at all about that. But it kind of quashed their whole radio thing. Well, then Michelle ended up, kicking her counterpart, Republican counterpart, to the curb, leaving him SOL, after her lover got fired, and sided with the Democrat to then spend the next 18 months pushing this contract on everybody. And not only contract, the $6.4 million, but they also pushed work. They gave $102,000 to for 4 councils in the 911 station. They got a lease agreement for Cleveland Communications to put equipment on our tower, because if they didn't have that equipment on the tower, their 5 city program wouldn't be working right now, because they didn't have the infrastructure, i.e. antennas, and my question to begin with all of this is, why were they so comfortable doing it? And I found my answer, which I'll give to you guys today. They had done this in 2020 in our neighboring county, and it caused issues in that county as well. And then Mr. Close, which we'll talk about today, sold us equipment from that same county that he knew didn't work. And we had to deal with that issue for 2 years. And Armbruster got blamed for that. And it was the new commissioners got blamed that they were trying to hold up something. And the entire time, this ass knew that they didn't work. But anyways, my RICO. Michelle Hung, Harry Williamson were pushing this radio contract for the 5 cities to get them more money for radios. I don't really understand why the 5 cities were separate from the county. This is number one. The county has never never in the history of Lorain County paid for radios for the municipalities. It's never been a thing. But when they saw this ARPA money, which is COVID money, when you hear ARPA, think COVID. When they saw this COVID money come up, they then colluded, certain people colluded to go after that money. And what the county was going to be doing is just giving this money as grants to these municipalities and the sheriff's office, $3 million, and saying, use this for radios. Now, can we say they're really going to use for that? Who knows? They want to say there are no kickbacks now. Whatever. So Michelle Hung, Harry Williamson got together with Alan Close and Mission Critical Partners, which is somebody who previously at the old board before Michelle Hung and Dave Moore did a study in Lorain County, and the price tag was $32 million or something like that. It was gonna be expensive, and the county basically at the time, Jim Cortez, the old administrator from 2019 previous, basically told the 5 cities, no, we're not. The county's not helping you here. It's going to cost too much money, whatever. Well, when Michelle came on board as a commissioner, and her boyfriend started, because this was literally Michelle's only thing that she did the entire time she was commissioner, which is not appropriate. It was push this contract. Her being involved in this to begin with is inappropriate, but especially since her lover, or the man that she had was having an affair with, was pushing this contract. She went along and did as well. They used the 5-city program. These guys, the fire chiefs, Avon Lake Fire Chief, Wellington Fire Chief, Sheffield Village Fire Chief, Avon Fire Chief, Adam Shaw with the Lorain County Sheriff's Office and Deputies Association, the Lorain County Fire Association, which is a private organization, the Lorain County AFL-CIO, Federation of Labor, which, by the way, before Harry was hired, he had just retired as the president of the AFL-CIO. And the AFL-CIO is a huge labor organization. They don't just cover the safety forces, they cover all the unions in the county. So that is a huge force that he brought in. But he retired before he took the job at 911 in October of 2020. He retired. But don't think that influence wasn't there, that he didn't have that influence over the 911 people and safety forces as, the previous AFL-CIO president. They didn't still have those connections. They then use these to then come in and pressure the commissioners to pass this contract, when Dave Moore said no originally, and then did exactly that when it wasn't her boyfriend didn't want really anything to do with her and it wasn't going her way. Now, these characters, Dana Gollner and Stephen Lavorchek of Ottawa County, come in because Dana Gollner, an ex-police officer, very interesting character. His interview's awesome, and we're going to be going over that tomorrow. He decided to approach Alan Close during this time and say that I have in his words, a 2-1 vote, and for 10% of your $6.4 million contract, which is $640,000, I can basically guarantee you this contract. I can also guarantee you I can guarantee you this contract, but because I need the $640,000 because many hands need to be paid, is pretty much what he said. And who are the many hands? That's still the question, and that's not up for me to decide. That's up for all of you to decide. Now, when this contract in 2021 didn't go through, in 2022, Michelle and Harry in the background, based off text messages, continued to push this radio contract. Eventually, on the last day in office of Matt Lundy, and the last day Michelle would actually have control of the county board in a special meeting, because it wasn't previously scheduled. It was scheduled at the beginning of December. It wasn't a normally scheduled meeting. They decided to pass a 7.2, price went up, $1 million contract to Cleveland Communications Inc. for radios. They're going to say it's a radio infrastructure, it's a radio system. Alan Close is a radio vendor. That's what he is. Now, what Alan Close is doing is using Avon's FCC license, our towers, and selling us equipment and letting us use the software, giving us the software in order for the radios to communicate. But he doesn't hold an FCC license that allows the broadband, towers. The city of Avon holds that. Taxpayers pay for that. And he doesn't own towers. He has one tower, I think he said, in Michigan. And he's leasing our towers in our cities and our county in order for his radio system, and I'm going to say quotations because it's ours, paid FCC license, to then charge a fee per radio, and also to the software. He needs to program the radios. We get charged for that. We get charged a monthly fee for the radios, and as well as like any issues arising with those, and those costs are extreme. I just saw in Huron County, I think 2 radios were $10,000 to program and get going. I mean, it's insane. And then sell us consoles in order for the system to talk to each other. All Alan owned, and then Alan would also owns that system. And he says system, it's software to talk to each other. However, he's using taxpayers' property in order to sell us equipment to then charge us a service fee to use the equipment to be able to talk to each other and use it. Now the county ended up going with a different way, and now if you're a municipality and you want to be on the county radio system, you just pay $10 a month for radio, and then Mark's in the back end's going to take everything, and Mark's also building infrastructure, which is towers, which is exactly what we actually needed instead of for interoperability versus this radio contract, and we're paying $6 million for radios that were already purchased, and the fire chiefs already received a grant. This is the RICO. They all colluded. Okay. So I'm going to first start here by playing. So I showed you my map, and this map gets a lot bigger because more people have been added. Now, in 2023, when the contract was rescinded, 15 days later, the contract was rescinded by the new Board of Commissioners. David Moore, Jeff Riddell right here rescinded the contract. Pandemonium broke loose. I mean, you had the sheriff up there yelling at the commissioners, we need this, you don't support safety forces, it's that. You had all the fire chiefs in there. You had, I mean, it's just been pandemonium since. You had the papers and, lawsuit, CCI filed a lawsuit, Harry Williamson filed a lawsuit for his termination. It turned into a fucking shit show. And all those lawsuits cost us money. I want that money recouped. I also want these cities to get out of this contract that I believe is fraud, because you don't own anything and we're paying for the FCC license to work your system. How does that work? Now, do I deny that the fire safety forces need radios? Yeah, but why are they coming at that? Why were they coming at the county to begin with? They should be coming at the city. But we're going to start with Dave Moore. Okay. Dave Moore, who was against this to begin with, walked into a meeting in June and saw this for what it was and was like, oh no, you know what I mean? Then the affair was exposed, and then their relationship with CCI was well and apparent. He, became he started whistleblowing, and he got beat up. I mean, I couldn't believe he stayed and dealt with this, honestly, for what it wasn't worth it, but he cared. And I'm going to play, starting off, an interview with Dave talking about with the investigator in 2022, before the contract was even passed, that what his concerns were with Commissioner Hung to the auditor's office. I think, me telling you what was said versus hearing the people themselves before this even happened. I mean, hindsight 3 years ago, before it even happened, he saw the play here, and no offense, the only person's story throughout this entire thing that has been consistent is Dave Moore's. Now, what does J.D. Tomlinson have to do with any of this? Well, when the contract was rescinded, Sheriff Stemeti decided to do an investigation into the radios and wanted a special prosecutor assigned. And after Attorney General Yost said no, Sheriff Stemeti and Van Zandt were upset and continued to press the for a special prosecutor. Now, J.D. Tomlinson said, if you have evidence of a crime, an actual crime, and it's very well documented crime, I will be happy to, use taxpayer dollars to assign you a special prosecutor. But right now, the auditor's office is investigating this. It's been sent to the AG. There's multiple agencies. I don't see the need of a duplicate investigation, a parallel investigation at the county level. It's a waste of taxpayer dollars. Well, did that stop them? No. They then started to investigate the prosecutor and railroaded his campaign. And we went through that in previous episodes. You go back for right now. I really can't, go right into it. But in summation, Van Zandt, who investigated the radios, worked with Michelle Hung. Sheriff Smitty, who worked with Michelle Hung, investigated the radios. And my belief, Dennis Will, who lost his primary to J.D. Tomlinson in 2020, started to look into Tomlinson himself. And when this relationship between Jennifer Battistelle and J.D. Tomlinson went awry, and she received a settlement from the prosecutor's office, be clear, from the prosecutor's office of $100,000. These guys saw it as an opportunity to come at JD for some kind of corruption, and they still haven't been able to prove it. But a week before elections, early voting started, they filed municipal charges for intimidation, bribery. And 3 years later, after the settlement, by the way, 2 years after the settlement, they filed intimidation, bribery, and I think it was obstruction or something. Charges 3 felonies against the Lorain County prosecutor. Now, what was so funny is Tony Silla, who was running against J.D. Tomlinson in that election, was working for the sheriff's office and is now the new prosecutor. But if you don't think that attack with Jennifer and she was complicit, I don't really care what JD says. I have enough text messages and, stuff showing that she's recording him to say she was complicit in setting JD up. She had a long-term relationship with Captain Van Zandt, who got caught sexting her, by the way, throughout this investigation, and saying, basically, if you help me go after the prosecutor, you can help, many people. Michelle Hung was mad at J. Tomlinson because he wouldn't investigate David Moore and Jeff Riddell rescinding her contract. Well, she also tried to leverage, my belief is she tried to leverage a sex videotape between her paramour, her lover, Harry Williamson, and J.D. Tomlinson's mother. And that is mentioned in the sheriff's report, that is mentioned in the auditor's investigation, that is mentioned by her own words that she told him twice. That is also mentioned in a text message that she sent JD the day that Harry Williamson was going to be terminated, that she had a video of importance that she needed to let JD know of. So then she started the whole smear campaign that he's a domestic abuser, this, that, and it affected his election. Now, Joe Rogan podcast, when he talked about the Ohio 4, brought up how J.D. Tomlinson is a microcosm of what happened when special prosecutors come in and are requested to go after political opponents in the county. Now, my thing I'm pissed off about is we paid for all of this. All of this nonsense, the hours they wasted investigating him, the hours they colluded with her, the lawfare bills, everything, which is why today we are going to get back into sex, lies, and county government. So, like I said, I want to start with the recordings from David Moore. Let's see. Dave Moore meeting 1. And these files are a little big, so I have to play them off my screen. So deal with me for 1 second. June meeting, 5-state discussion. Is it this one? And then we're going from this, we're going to go. And I'm gonna stop here and there and fill you guys in on why I'm playing this, but right, RFP. This must be the first one because I said meeting one. Now, just be clear before this plays. Hold on. Okay. Before this plays, I want you guys to notice the date. It is June 6th of 2022. This is 6 months before Michelle will pass that contract, okay? So this is 6 months before he even knows if they're for sure going to do this, but this is his concerns to the auditor, Investigator Todd Clark.
Investigator Monley and Forensic Audit Manager George Mavrosa is here as well. And so just so I can make this easy, Commissioner, we had a conversation back in August of 2021 about these issues that we're going to talk about today, right?
Correct.
Okay. And so some of the issues are related to Commissioner Michelle Hung and some extramarital affairs she was having with the former 911 director, Harry Williamson. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So we talked about that. I don't want to really get into all that. I want to kind of start from when you took office.
Correct.
You took office in January of 2021.
Yep.
Is that right?
Correct.
And after you took office there became some issues with Commissioner Hung relative to a 911 bill system for the county, radio system, right?
Correct.
And there also was some issues regarding employee hiring that Ms. Hung was involved in. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so I guess what I want to do is let's start in January or whenever this issues with the radio system came up. Can you just start me there and we'll just kind of go through that whole process and I'll ask you some specific questions.
Okay. Well, the issues in regards to the radio system really didn't kick in till June. When I attended a June 14th or 15th meeting with Michelle Hung. I was invited to listen to a presentation with Mission Critical, CCI's president and one of his employees. Michelle Hung and Harry Williamson was there. Chris Kish was there because Tom Williams could not make it. Amy Marcel was there, who was my secretary and administrative assistant. I bring her to take notes when I need them. And they had an itinerary to follow, and they started talking, and nobody was making sense. Finally, they said, "Well, why don't we just call Mission Critical on the phone and have them explain what's going on?" Because I still couldn't, I was never acknowledged when I sat down. I was the last one in the meeting. No one acknowledged me. No introductions, and the Mission Critical guy got on, I think his name was Steve Haberman or something, and he proceeded to start talking about a $6.5 million contract, which would be no bid for CCI, in which to bring in a new radio system to the 911. And I advised them that there's no way I'm going to do a $6.5 million no bid. They proceeded to tell me, and they started to quote a statute, like a services statute or something in Ohio, which I said I'm well aware of that statute. I said, but there's no way I'm going to do a $6.5 million no bid contract. And I got up and I walked out. After I left, my secretary informed me that he looked at the Commissioner Hung CCI and said, looks like you need to make an alliance with Commissioner Lundy.
Interview with.
Okay, so Dave brings up the statute that they used. Now my question is, like, how did they know about the statute? Why would they be so comfortable bringing up that statute for a $6.4 million no bid contract? Well, because in 2020, they did this with Huron County. What are you talking about, Katie? Well, while I was listening to this interview, right? Listening to this interview with Dick Miller from Marks, which is like a PUCO for radio, so for the state. It's they serve more, it's Motorola radios that they use or whatever, but the system itself, which is actual like the broadband, how your radios talk to each other. Okay, the software that they use and towers that they build for interoperability to make sure that you're covered is a state agency. It's why you have lower rates, and it's all about interoperability. He said that in 2020 he learned that Huron County contracted with Cleveland Communications for a $4.4 million no bid contract. And there was some controversy because the city of Norwalk fire chief decided to go with Marks instead of CCI like the rest of the county. Now, I have a couple phone calls today about that. I'm going to talk to some people that were actually involved and like how that went down. But I do know when it went through, which is this is important. The Emergency Management Agency, EMA, Art Mead. I do know he was involved, which is so funny because Harry Williamson, before he was elected, went down to Huron County, which is where he met Alan Close. What he states where he met Alan Close. Where they were, working on the new CCI system. And Art Mead likes to be on Facebook. So, by the way, Art, I screenshot everything. So, that I would stop commenting if I were you. That this is a nothing burger because it's not. So, there's that connection. And I'm going to continue with this. Part 2 of Dave's little clip here.
And said, looks like you need to make an alliance with Commissioner Lundy. Trying to think what else happened. And give her credit, she said, no, that's not going to happen. That was on June 14th, June 15th.
2021.
Of 2021. And that's kind of was my first indication. I realized that there's something going on at 911. And within probably the next 30 days, which is now trying to figure out which day what happened, but I would say by July 15th, the relationship with Commissioner Hung and myself pretty much was deteriorated. In that time, I made the decision to reinvestigate my votes on 911 and say, okay, what did happen? This, as I was working on economic development programs and other things, I mean, that's kind of where I started to find some other irregularities, I guess is the word, that I didn't feel was appropriate, and proceeded to start exposing them. And I believe we met sometime in August in which I shared some of that information with you.
Right. So let me go back through that. So you gave me a series of packets.
Correct.
And these packets are things that you discovered when what you're talking about here.
Correct.
You decided to go back and review your votes on some of these things. So I'd just like to go down them one at a time here.
When we go on the April, I think it was April 28th, there was a bid, or there was an approval of 102,000.
Yeah.
Would you like me to talk about that, or no?
I'll get to that in
Okay,
a second.
sorry.
But there's one in here from January 27th, 2021. And this one has some emails in there from Jeff Armbruster from North Ridgeville. It was a public records request made by Mr. Miller from DAS.
Okay.
And so, I'm trying to understand, or I think I got it, but I want you to clarify a few things for me. When this whole radio system came up for the county, it's your understanding, it's my understanding from reading the documents that Cleveland Communications had entered into a contract in order to do what they call the Five Cities Project. And that was a radio system for Avon Lake, Sheffield. I'm thinking North Ridgeville was supposed to be involved in it, and another city to have their own radio system. That is not something that was done by the county. That was
Correct.
Something they did separate. Is that right?
Correct.
And then the idea of the entire county system came about because Cleveland Communications is talking with the former 911 director Williamson about saying, hey, we're doing this here. We'd like to expand it to the entire county. and that's what kind of spawned this whole thing. Is that right? Or
I would say it's the other way around. I think what happened was they wanted to go county-wide, and it wasn't working. I was told that in 2018 and 2019, they did a countywide study in regards to to having a countywide radio system. The problem was it was 15 to 20 million. They put it on the shelf. A lot of people felt that they wanted to continue that project, but couldn't get past the commissioners. So they started out
prior to your administration?
Correct. And so then what happened was they decided to use the 5 cities, start there, and then put pressure on and use the pressure from that level to come on up and force the county into a countywide system. My understanding, and again, this is my understanding, that there was like $1 million grant that they received, and as of today, they're still not using it, because it's one of those things where, which comes first, chicken or the egg? And so my understanding was that they were using a lot of politics in order to get the 5 cities on, and then that from that point, then they were going to use those 5 cities to get the county and force us into a one system, like let's say a monopoly system, whatever you want to use words, and that's kind of what I was told as I started reading these documents. So if you go back, that's why it's easier for me when I see them. I can kind of talk. Like the one issue you saw, there was a meeting in end of January in which that CCI said they weren't happy, but we'll use the unions and to put pressure.
So it's one thing I do love is, you're going to hear it coming up. CCI has asked multiple times, did you want to use the unions to push this contract on your city council mayors who kowtowed to the union, apparently? And don't forget Harry Williamson, previously president of AFL-CIO, the biggest union. It's a big union in this county. That is the union in this county, to push this contract. And, Alan Close will deny it. But I have the email. We have the email. It was accidentally sent to someone in Medina County, which was then forwarded to Lorain County. I forget who, but we have the email that says we're gonna use the unions to push this city contract. And Dave's right. They didn't think they could start at the county, but they did this 5-city project, and then they were going to try to force the county into this because they were after those ARPA dollars. And they did it in Huron County. I mean, I don't think Alan Close thought it was going to be that big of an issue in this county until he ran into David Moore and quickly learned that his dream is going to be harder than he thought. So now this is where we're going to end with Dave. Is the last clip is about where he sees this going, because remember, sorry, oh my gosh, hold on. Okay, so what he's talking about is that day he sent the RFP for this new contracts in 2021. This whole thing kind of deaded after the affair, right? It was just too politically, how do I say it? She wanted it to simmer down, pretty much, her and Harry, let people forget about the affair, the controversy, and we're going to bring this back up. Now, she did pass the lease agreement in October of 2021, gave a lease agreement to Alan Close to rent space on the tower, our tower, for his 5-city program, which he said was crucial to his 5 cities, because if he didn't have space on our tower, his little system here wouldn't work that well. But so Dave, 6 months before Michelle, on the last day in power, passed the contract, says this. He sees the writing on the wall. He sees what is about to happen. He sees their push. He says it's political right now. There's an election right now. Lundy's being pressured, which is the Democrat, about this election by the safety forces. And I'm going to tell you right now, they are going to push this contract through the back door, like a backdoor way. 6 months before they do it.
On that mission critical. That first one that had CCI written all over it for mission critical to bid this out. And what that RFP, from my understanding, is the beginning of having. And
Meaning how?
well, what they're doing is they voted on that mission critical for $56,000, and they hired them to write an RFP, which I sent that this morning to you because I finally got it, and they're going to bid that out through July 26th. And what that RFP, from my understanding, is the beginning of having a countywide one system, which is what that's all about from last year. So what they're doing now is they're doing the steps to lock it in so that once they get this foundation built at 911, then there'll only be one radio system that you can use. Now, I was in executive session after the first one that had CCI written all over it for mission critical to bid this out. That's when they were told to, they said that, well, you can just rewrite it and lean it so that it goes to Harris. Those kind of conversations were had in executive session. So that's where I sent you.
Who said that?
I think Petticord said that.
Petticord said write the
So
RFP.
you go. He says you can always write an RFP to lean one way or the other.
So he said basically you want Harris.
Well, that's how he said it.
Now, that brings up the fact that in the RFP that they just wrote, that Dave, I don't think yet realizes, they use specific language. The term is phase 2, and using that phase 2 language technically knocked any other competitor from being able to bid. So they rigged the bid. That's how they rigged the bid. Now, does phase 1 system and a phase 2 system have a really big difference? No. Is it still a 700 megahertz system? Yes. Is it the phase 2 better than the phase 1? No. Nobody that talks about it in the meetings or anything knows what they're talking about, but that is how they rigged the bid. They wrote the RFP in a way that would not allow other bidders to participate, to give it to their company that they had been promoting for over a year, CCI.
You can always get an RFP to lean one way or the other.
Well, how did you interpret that?
He was talking to Michelle, so I took it as Harris. I took it as
What do you know when that happened? What?
probably right after I exposed the CCI contract. That day that I said there's nothing in here, but this is. They thought I was going after the dollar amount, but I was going after the fact that this is not a quote. When you have a vendor's name in there 20 times, I goes, that's not an RFP.
Now, when he's saying a vendor's name 20 times, he's talking about in March of that year, they Mission Critical Partners, who's supposed to be independent, tried to say we're going to take a relook at the radio system to award the contract to, literally, they wrote in there, Cleveland Communications, Inc. So a private vendor that is supposed to be looking at this issue with a non-biased eyes, not pushing one vendor or the other, writes in their contract that they are looking to secure one vendor when they are supposed to be open to what is best for Lorain County, and previously said because of interoperability issues in 2018 recommended Marks, but now all of a sudden, because of these relationships that you'll see later, is pushing for CCI. And that contract was edited, by the way, because Dave threw a holy fit that you can see on Lorain County Report. It's March 2022. Threw a holy fit in the meeting, like this is corrupt. You can't as a private company that's supposed to have no opinion here about what vendor we go through except whatever is best for interoperability. You can't then now put it that you're basically coming in to secure a contract for a private vendor. That's corrupt.
And it was in Mission Critical, supposed to be an independent company looking out for us.
And what is your impression of them?
Of Mission Critical, I think they're compromised. I don't think they are an independent source for.
And what makes you think that?
Because of what they're doing on their bid process. that alone itself, they're leaning Harris. If we're hiring an independent contractor to help us out through this IT nightmare, whatever you want to call it, on what's best for the county, and the fact they're leaning one way or the other tells me that they're not an independent contractor.
So is it your belief that Hung and Lundy are going to approve this?
Yes.
What's Lundy's? What's
He
Lundy gaining out of this?
The firefighters endorsement, firefighter union endorsements. He's looking at re-election, and they're busting him up. They've come to the meetings.
Now, Lundy lost his election. This is how close his election was, not to cut him off, but 136 votes, I believe it was. But it was 100, I want to say 136. Riddell, the other commissioner, the deciding factor between if we kept this contract or not, won by 136 votes. So do not tell me your vote doesn't count on a local level. It absolutely does. This contract, this corrupt contract, was repealed because this man won by 136 votes and could vote with Dave to repeal it, because Dave was in no man's land at this point.
They're in full force. Chiefs are all there. There's usually 5 to 7 fire chiefs there.
And they want the Harris
They
system.
want their Harris system. My argument's always been, if they want it, have their city, why are they coming to our meetings and not the city council meetings, right? So I think, and the cops aren't showing up because they got the radios they want. Everybody has the radios that they want. I don't really understand until about 2 weeks ago when I heard we're creating a regional 911 district, and I went, that's what they want to do. They want to have one radio system, the whole district, which makes that's when you're up to 15 to 20 million. And so now I'm talking politics and policies, not, so I think that's where we're heading, and I'm going to have to, I don't know where this is going to go, but July 27th on the bid that I got, I think they have to have the final bids in on the system that we just talked about, the 6.5, or is it 15 million? I don't know, but that's what Mission Critical had prepared. I got it over the weekend. Today's Monday. I haven't even had time to look it up. I had it forwarded to you today. So
you think the workaround now is what? What do you think?
I think what they're going to do is they're going to do an RFP. I think.
And the RFP is going to be written in a way that only
It's already
Communications can get the bid.
It's already written that
Bingo.
way. I forwarded it on to. Who did I forward it on to? I can't see I'm having email issues. I'm trying to get a hold of Vasu, let him look at it, and let Marks look at it and say, hey guys, here's what's coming. Help me out. Because my opinion, and Vasu is like, Dave, he's the one I talked to. He says, you really don't need to do this. And so I'm like, I'm looking out more of the financial aspect of it.
You don't need to build this out this way?
Yeah.
And what is, he's just,
But again, I'm not.
no, I get it.
I'm more a financial. Yeah,
I get it.
Yeah.
But he's claiming that this is over the top.
Oh, big time. This is like a Cadillac plan for a Yugo. I like that because she probably doesn't know what a Yugo is.
She might.
I usually say Chevette, but that's
She won't know.
like, yeah. So
Okay.
So does that make sense now?
It
a little
does
bit
make
better.
sense, yeah.
So I think now that Lundy's getting pressure because the firefighters know that he's up, the chiefs and the unions. Michelle is she's still involved with Harry Williamson, and they're still in a relationship and plan to be, it looks like. So so there's her upside on that.
Okay. And then one final thing, these shredded documents that I picked up from you the other day, I just want to.
Okay, so that's enough of Dave. So Dave, 6 months before this contract was even brought up, okay, said they are going to write this bid in a way where CCI will be the only contender. They've been planning this for over a year. I don't even understand why the fire chiefs have their radios. They got a grant themselves. Why aren't they approaching their city councils? And his story has stayed very consistent throughout this entire debacle. So my next clip is going to be the start of Alan Close's interview. Close intro. Here we go.
Your company.
And Cleveland Communications.
Okay, and just so it's clear on here, the reason we're here today is that the auditor's office issued a subpoena to your company. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And we had a conversation before today, and I indicated to you that we wanted to sit for an interview in connection with this investigation. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And as a response to that, I'm sure you've had discussions with Mr. DePiero about the document request that we issued to you and the interview today, and you're here voluntarily. Is that correct?
I am.
Okay. So I guess we'll start from the beginning here. At some point in time, your company got involved in a project with the county of Lorain. Is that correct?
Yes.
And can you just kind of walk me through from the beginning how you got involved in this? And then, like I said before we started the recording, we'll kind of let you do your thing here, and then if we have specific questions as we go along, we'll stop you and ask.
Is there a specific contract that you're interested in to start with, or
Well, I'm interested in whatever started the entire process. I know there's multiple things going on between your company and Lorain County. Is that correct?
that is correct.
Okay, so why don't we start from the initial one, the earliest interaction, and I guess I'll let me put it this way. I'm interested in what's been going on since the new commissioners were elected in Lorain County. So that would be January 2021 forward. Have you done any business with the county prior to January 2021?
Not directly with the county, but I have done business in the county
With who?
with the 5 cities in the northeast corner, or the east end of the county.
And what are those 5 cities?
Avon Lake, North Ridgeville, Sheffield Village, and Sheffield Lake.
And is
They're part of a large project where for about 2 years we were progressing towards them buying a radio system, those 5 communities.
okay?
And they also, they were approached by the Marks folks as a competitive to what we were proposing to them. And then in the context of that, things dragged until early 21, when they decided to do business with us.
The 5 cities.
The 5 cities did.
Okay.
And I built a radio system over 2021, and this predates the 2 new commissioners coming on board.
Okay.
They were subsequently a part of it after the building, the decision by the 5 communities was made. The commissioners were involved from a voyeuristic, or aware of what we were doing.
Let me stop you. You're talking about prior to the current board?
Prior to the 3 2 that came on board in January.
Right. So the commissioners prior to Hung and Moore.
I don't know what they were aware of.
Right, but I'm assuming Mr. Lundy was involved in this pre-21?
I don't know of his involvement in the 5 city project.
Well, when you say voyeuristic thing, you say the county was just kind of watching what was going on during this 5-year process? Or 2-year process from afar?
Yes.
Okay.
That's a lie. The county, I'm going to interrupt here and there, and I'm just going to actually play this little interview through because it'd be easier that way instead of my clips. I'm just going to make clips for TikTok. That's a lie, because Cortez made it very clear to Streeter, to Baez, Betza, Avon Lake Chief, who is the lead person in this, that the county will not be participating in a radio system after they understood what the cost of it was going to be. He shut it down, and Streeter with Avon Lake also knew that, and that's documented that Cortez said absolutely no. So I want you to keep in your mind when they say, was the county involved? No. When Michelle Hung and Lundy, when Michelle Hung came on with Harry, That is when this reopened. That is when Steve Haberman approached Michelle Hung. That is when the fire chiefs approached Michelle Hung, and that's documented. I can say that now because that's recorded in an interview. And that is when Harry and Michelle colluded with the fire chiefs by themselves to proceed to get this contract for the 5-city program for some reason. In my life, ask gas or grass, it's for some reason.
Go ahead.
Yes. So we commenced to building the radio system. I put 3 sites of simulcast 700 megahertz radio system in. One site is at the 911 tower, and then there's one at Avon at Mills Road and Route 83, and then the third site is up on Walker Road at the water tower that Avon Lake owns. While all of this is going on, starting sometime in January when the new commissioners came on board, we were called by then Harry Williamson. He was the 911 coordinator, I think was his official title, that he wanted to be more involved in what we were doing, or wanted us to be more involved in things that are going on in the comm center.
Okay, so let me stop you real quick. This Mr.
So Harry Williamson is the one that Alan Close is saying contacted them. So it wasn't the previous board. It wasn't anything like that. Harry Williamson, knew of the 5-city program because of his previous, 911 bullshit. And he and I think his meeting in Huron County with his friends. And he wanted, to link up with Cleveland Communications. And Michelle, who was having an affair with him at the time, was brought along on that. So let me find where we are at.
Process from afar?
Yes.
Okay. This 911 director, Williamson, contacts you and says specifically, what did he ask you for? Was he interested in a countywide system, or what was the parameters
That
of
was the nexus. Based on what we were building in the 5 communities, the county was interested in doing their own. Either they bought one and extended what we had already done, or eventually it became the 5-city radio system became one that I own, and they pay me, well, they will pay me when they finally get everything squared away, for monthly use of the radio system.
Gotcha.
So, and that was a result of the interaction between them and Marks and them and us. They were going to go on the Marks system, and I threw a proposal on the table
For the 5 cities.
to the 5 cities.
Okay.
That they couldn't turn down.
At this time, there was no talk of Marks. And the way that Dick Miller, I want to just put this out there because he always thinks like Marks is his competitor. Alan Close has an issue with Marks because for the last 10 years, he has been trying to get an ISSI, this component, on the Marks towers so he can use their system to with his system pretty much. And the cell phone companies aren't allowing that, and nor is the Department of Administrative Services. Dick Miller is not in competition with Dick Miller from representing Marks, Ohio, Department of Administrative Services, is not in competition with Alan Close. They already, 80 out of the 88 counties are on Marks because of its interoperability, which means, for one, they're putting up towers, which is huge. It's very expensive to do at their cost. And they're investing in counties that also want to build up their infrastructure. But their biggest thing is interoperability, that you'll be able to talk to Highway Patrol, you'll be able to talk to somebody in Columbus, your other counties, you'll all be able to talk to each other. He is not chasing after Cleveland Communications leads and going with them. He's saying, if you guys want to jump on, jump on. If you don't, don't. But I will tell you this from what Dick Miller said in his interview about Huron is, they did a $4.4 million no bid with Cleveland Communications where all they had to do is spend $500,000 originally, and they could have been on the Mark system. So Huron County, I'd be pissed. But the legislator, my point weaving a little bit, my Trump weaving thing. The original point was he went in front of the legislature May 8th of 2021. For one, said Lorain County was already going to contract with them when that wasn't even a thing yet. And he also said he wanted $1 million out of our state budget in order to get this ISSI thing to be able to use Mark's system for his system, to be able to basically go into their system. And the state of Ohio said no. And to me, as somebody that knows how the state budget works, if you are coming to the General Assembly when they are finalizing their biennium, which you should have been in front of them 2 years ago, you already know that's a nothing burger and it's not going to happen.
So we won the battle, and we began distributing the radios that were a part of that and building the radio system.
Okay.
The county's watching that, and all the fire chiefs in the county unanimously said, we don't want anything to do with Marks, and we want you, Lorain County, to finish the project that CCI had started on the east end of the county and add whatever additional sites had to be added to make the thing truly countywide.
Gotcha. So what, do you know what caused or what attracted Williamson to contact your company as opposed to Mark's, or do you know whether he contacted multiple companies or?
I couldn't say whether he contacted more than me.
Okay.
I know Mark's is heavily involved in the county, so I'm sure he heard from them or had conversations with them.
Okay.
And undoubtedly, Vasu Communications factors into that. They were the legacy servicer for Lorain County, or they still are actually, but so I'm sure he's had conversations with them as well.
And so is it safe to say Vasu is another company, is competitor?
It's a competitor to, he's an independent dealer, as I am, for Kenwood products.
Okay, and that's like a Mark's or a Harris.
He sells radios on the Marks system, and he has a relationship with the Marks folks.
So Vasu is I if I'm understanding the way this works, correct me if I'm wrong. So you're a Harris product company. That's who
We're
you
a vendor
push
for Harris.
Okay.
Harris.
And then is it safe to say Vasu is a vendor for
Kenwood Johnson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Mark's is its own
Marks is state of Ohio.
state of Ohio
But
system.
they're a proponent of Motorola.
Motorola products.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. So, sorry to cut you off there. I just want to
No,
make
it's
sure I got that correctly. So when did he come to you? Was it shortly after this new administration took office, or was it prior?
Harry?
Yeah.
It wasn't until after.
Okay.
We had no contact. The only thing I knew was the campaign signs as you drive through Lorain County.
Hung
in late
more and more
20
hung.
Right.
Right.
That's all I knew about them.
Okay. And so there were no conversations between you and any of the new commissioners or Mr. Williamson prior to them taking office?
No.
Okay. When was the first, if you know, contact you had with Mr. Williamson?
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. I have all my emails and everything in this thumb drive, all the documents you're looking for, with the exception of a couple that I printed out.
Okay.
It's all in there. I don't know when that
Can you
happened.
rough guess me? Was it January? Was it February? Was it June?
I can look at my computer real quick.
No, that's all right. You know, if it's in there, but at some point in 2021, I would assume prior to everything exploding,
After they took
right?
office,
It was
yeah.
after they took
Yeah.
office, but before it became hit
Before
the
the
papers.
scandal hit? Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Fair enough.
Yes.
And so he calls you up and he says, "Hey, I'm interested in taking what you've done with this 5 cities and expanding this countywide."
Correct.
Okay. And then what happens?
Well, it was mostly discussions at that point.
Okay.
The county has done nothing as far as committing one way or the other. We had a presentation that we made to them, I believe it was in April,
Okay.
again, before the scandal broke.
Gotcha.
We put a PowerPoint together, and that's on the thumb drive.
Okay.
We went over to the 911 center. They have a conference room there. Michelle Hung was there. Harry Williamson was there. Tom Williams, the former administrator, was there.
Mm-hmm.
The new IT guy, whose name escapes me, and Russ Scarborough was
Was he
there.
Welch? Is Welch the IT guy?
I couldn't tell you.
Okay.
I've only met the guy once at that
Fair enough.
meeting. So we presented our concept for the county. It was, we could add 5 more sites, and they started adding up the number of radios that the the county would need, the sheriff's office and other agencies within the county, so we could go back and put it all together and give them a proposal.
Let me stop you real quick. So when you say adding up the number of radios, so this countywide system was going to be for every safety service, right?
Police, fire,
EMS, any of
Yes.
these kind of.
Sheriff's office.
All the police departments.
Yes.
Okay,
It
go
would
ahead.
be offered to all of them.
Gotcha.
At that point, the concept in the county's mind was to buy the additional 5 sites.
That you have for the 5 cities
I would tie the 3 that I have into the additional 5 sites.
and give it all to the county.
Well, that was an option. They
Okay.
could buy the 3 that already existed, or they could just buy the 5, but either way, the computer that controls all 8 of them is mine. And we would tie all 8 of them together so that it would be seamless, whether a fireman in North Ridgeville wanted to talk to a fireman in Wellington, it wouldn't make any difference, because he could do that.
It's all in the same system.
It's all the same.
Okay, just so I'm clear here, and I'm not a radio guy by any means, I just carried one for 100 years,
I
but
hear you.
you, if I correctly, you told me earlier, you own the system that these 5 cities are
I
on
do.
right now, right?
That is
And
correct.
those 5 cities pay you?
They will be, as soon as this is, again, one of those contracts, there's so many things
So,
going on.
so at the end of the day, the final thing is, it's your equipment, you have it installed in these locations, whatever makes it the best, I'm assuming. And then they have access to the system,
Yes,
and it's on a contract.
yes.
And each of these 5 entities will pay you some fee
Yes.
to have access to the system, and then I'm assuming that contract runs for how long?
2 years at a time.
Okay, and then every 2 years, if they can walk away,
They can walk away if they choose.
or they can renew it?
Yes,
Okay, and so then with the county's idea or plan, what they were trying to do, are you saying that as part of this larger project, the county is gonna have to make a decision, or has the option to say, hey, we 5 that are already up,
the 3.
or 3, I'm sorry, and merge them with whatever else we're
5
doing,
additional ones, yep.
and then redo a contract for everything?
No, I don't think it'll work that way. I
Okay,
think
so
the-
explain to me how that
If
would
the
work.
county buys it, buys the additional 5 sites, I'll have a contract with them. I already have one with the 5, individually with each of the 5 communities. And I think a copy of the contract is in there.
Okay,
The county would then own their portion of it, and we would just tie them all together. Because with the VITA core that controls everything, it's simply a traffic cop, is all it's doing, is processing audio and data back
hey,
and
this
forth.
is North Ridgeville, this is Avon
Right,
Lake,
this
is
goes here,
Lorain
this
County
goes there,
Sheriff.
goes wherever it
Gotcha.
has to be.
Okay.
Or if they decide they don't want to buy it and they ask me to build the rest of it out, I'll have a separate kind of contract that will say, we're committed to using your radio system, and we're going to bring the sheriff's office and the snowplow guys and whomever else. It can go as far as the school buses and the teachers and everybody in the county that needs to be able to talk to each other could do that.
So it could be as big as, or small, or tailored, any way they want to do it.
Correct.
And whatever they tell you to say, Alan, this is what we're looking for, you're gonna construct it,
Make it happen.
and
That's what we
then
do.
you give them a price and say, hey, this is how it's gonna work, this is what we need, and,
It's either gonna be an upfront number, which I believe was about 6.5 million to buy the other 5 with a bunch of radios and all the other connectivity items that are there, microwave shots between the sites. Or I spend the investment and I build it and then they pay me monthly. Either way, it works out fine.
I got you.
That's what's been on the table.
Well, I
Since
I
then.
might be confused here, and I apologize, it doesn't take much. So they have the option of just buying the equipment.
Pay attention here, okay? He's trying, what they're trying to do is they're trying to take this 5-city project, they're trying to take this county project, and they're trying to make it like it's like one project, and it's not. The 5 cities was moving forward regardless of what the county was, with the intent that the county was going to jump on the word of Michelle and Harry, okay? On the word of Michelle and Harry. But before this, they were told, no go. So this is why he's getting confused. So pay attention to what Todd Clark says, because I think he's starting to get it here. That, no offense, you're using all of our equipment. I mean, all of our infrastructure to just place your equipment, and then we're paying you as service charges to operate that equipment. It's
Equipment from you and doing it themselves, is what you're saying.
I would do it for them, but they buy it from me.
And then once you're done with it, you walk away.
I would maintain it.
How would it be different than what these 5 cities are doing? If you did it that way?
If they bought it, they would own it and they wouldn't pay me monthly to use it. They would pay me annually to maintain it, because there are updates and firmware updates and things that have to be done.
Okay.
To maintain the radio system. And then the difference is these 5 communities don't own the infrastructure. I do. I'll still tie them all together.
Right, so I guess I'm trying to figure out what are you doing differently for the 5 cities that you wouldn't be doing for Lorain County, besides not owning the equipment?
Nothing.
Nothing, okay, then I do have it right, all right. Okay, so they come to you, and what specifically did they ask you to do? Or did they ask you to put together different proposals, or did they ask you to?
They asked for a proposal, which I
Okay.
believe was dated June 1. That is in the thumb drive.
Okay,
And it spells out what we were gonna do for them if they were to buy the equipment.
okay,
And then there was a follow-up presentation that we made in front of Commissioner Moore and Commissioner Lundy,
okay,
which is the first time I met Commissioner Moore or Lundy.
okay. Well, let me
Again,
back up then. So this entire process that was going on, were you meeting with Williamson and Hung?
I had met with Williamson several times in his office,
Okay,
and I had had communication, either telephone or in person when she came to the presentations with Commissioner Hung.
okay, but up until this presentation to the full board, you hadn't had any conversation?
That's a lie. They had lunch together with Harry. They had met together after the fire chief's meeting. They actually went back to Michelle's office based off of testimony interviews and email in her own calendar. You're not good at paper trails. You all, I have found your ish. So that's a lie. He was meeting with them previously.
She wasn't at the follow-up presentation. She had a family emergency and did not come to that meeting, but the other
You
2 were
presented
there.
the 2?
Yes.
Okay, and go ahead, I'm sorry.
And Mr. Williams, the administrator, was not at that second meeting,
Was someone there representing these people?
just the 2 commissioners.
That's all you met with?
That's all I remember seeing at that
Okay,
meeting.
fair enough, go ahead.
There were other people in there. My salesman was in the room. Again, Russ Scarborough was there.
And who was Scarborough?
I think Harry was there. Russ Scarborough is the assistant 911 coordinator. He's currently there working for Jeff Young,
Who's the new?
who's the new 911 coordinator.
Okay, go ahead.
Don't get confused between Williams and Williamson. Williams is the administrative assistant who he's talking to. He only met the one time. And William's son is the one that he meets with repeatedly, 911 director.
So we gave the presentation. They had the question and answer period. They asked questions, we answered the questions, and that concluded that presentation.
Okay. Was there ever any discussion of this contract, you would have to do an RFP form, that there'd be a bid process?
There was a question, I think from Commissioner Moore at a follow-up meeting in their office where they conduct their meetings on the 4th floor. He asked.
Now pay attention here. He's talking about the June meeting that he walked out of. He's going to talk about how Dave gets upset. And he's also going to talk about how Dave was the only one in that meeting. I'm sorry, this is important. He's going to talk about how Dave was the only one in that meeting asking questions about a $6.4 million no bid contract. He's going to be the only one asking. Pay really close attention here.
Steve Haberman, the mission critical consultant, whether it had to go out to bid or not go out to bid.
Okay.
Doesn't matter to me one way or the other.
Right, I understand that, but were there discussions about whether or not this had to go out to bid in your presence, other than what you're telling me?
Other than with Commissioner Moore, no.
So did you have any conversations with Commissioner Hung or Williamson about going out to bid?
I don't recall if they ever asked me if it had to go out to bid or not.
Did they ask you if you had an issue with it going out to bid?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. So, at some point, my understanding is correctly, at some point there becomes an issue between the commissioners about whether or not this has to go out to bid. Were you made aware of that?
At the meeting on the fourth floor, Commissioner Moore was questioning. This
Okay.
should go out to bid. How long does it take to put an RFP together?
Okay.
And those were questions directed at Steve Haberman from Mission Critical.
And that's their consultant.
Yes,
Right.
he is a consultant.
Okay. And so subsequent to that, did you have any conversations with Mr. Williamson or Commissioner Hung or anyone, for that matter, about whether or not your company was going to have to get into a bid process over this project?
Not that I recall.
Was there any conversation?
That's important, people. He's asking, did the private consultant, the guy that is supposed to be consulting the county on what is the best, not vendor, but system, you know what I mean, for interoperability, not for purchasing radios, for interoperability, which is towers, and think towers, don't think radio, that so your radios can communicate in the county. He is Mission Critical Partners should have absolutely told Cleveland Communications, you are not going to be the only bidder here, especially when in 2018 they recommended interoperability with Marks. Make it make sense.
Between you and Mr. Williamson relative to maybe having these 5 cities that you are already doing this for have some conversation with the board relative to pushing the contract?
I don't know what you mean.
Well, I mean, I guess my question is, did you ever talk to anybody about or communicate with anybody about getting the unions and the cities that already had your system to make a push to the commissioners to expand it through your company?
Are you speaking specifically of North Ridgeville?
I'm just asking in general.
North Ridgeville Fire Union was very, very adamant against their fire department being put on the MARC system. And There was a meeting, got it, I think it's in July. There was a meeting there were a couple of meetings in North Ridgeville, Tuesdays. Yep. In July, there were a couple of meetings, and I believe the one on July 6th, the fire union was present in 5 or 6 firemen that were there, and they were very adamant about not being put on the MARC system. They wanted to be part of the 5-city project, even though the city was considered at all times as part of the 5 cities. And those
You got me. You lost me again. So you did this project for the 5 cities. It was North Ridgeville, Avon Lake.
right.
Who else?
Nothing to do with the
Sheffield Village
county.
and Sheffield Lake.
In Sheffield Lake. And so when you say North Ridgeville wasn't part of it, what does that mean?
They were part of it. They were always part of the group.
Okay.
Parallel to what we were doing, the city of Avon Lake headed up an AFG grant, Assistance to Firefighters grant. And that included all 5 of those aforementioned communities. And they tried a year ago and they ran out of money, so they tried again and they were successful. And we were processing, going forward, that they were going to get a whole bunch of radios and they were going to put them on this new system. At some point, the mayor and the safety director of North Ridgeville decided that the police were going to go to Marks and they wanted the fire department to go to Marks. That angered the firemen. I don't know why, but every one of the...
Who's the mayor? Which mayor was it?
Corcoran.
It's Corcoran, and his safety director, what's his name?
Armbruster.
Armbruster, gotcha, okay.
All 22 of the fire chiefs in Lorain County do want...
Now, this is how Jeff Armbruster, who later in 2023 would become, this is 2021, in 2023 would become the administrative assistant. This is how Armbruster got brought in, because Armbruster was the safety services guy in North Ridgeville. And when North Ridgeville Fire brought up the fact that they did not want to go onto a mark system, did not want to transfer to Marks, but wanted to, stay with the 5-city program, Armbruster fought him on it. Now, people said, oh, his son lobbied for him. Bullshit. When Armbruster was senator, he fought against Marks because he thought it would be a kind of money scheme, right? And turns out now that he sees it, years, decades later, that it's a good system. Now he was a proponent of it. But so when people say, oh, he was just a proponent of Marks and lobbyists anyways, that's untrue. So, and the fire chief from North Ridgeville is actually the one that said in his interview that the fire chiefs approached Michelle Hung because she ran on supporting the union, which she got her endorsement while Harry was president of the AFL-CIO, who became her lover/paramour.
Nothing to do with Marks.
Okay.
And they've said that publicly. It's not something that I pushed them to do. They just don't want it. They want to use the system that we have begun installing.
So they go and they make their case.
They make their case at city council. I was there.
Okay.
So was Michelle Hung, and so was Harry Williamson.
Okay.
The firemen made their case, and at a subsequent meeting, the Marks folks came in with a bunch of engineers from Motorola to make their case. Mm-hmm. It got testy, it got ugly, back and forth between the firemen and city council and the mayor's office, and then when the Marks guys showed up at the subsequent meeting, it didn't get ugly, but they were saying what they were going to say to promote Marks.
The fire department.
No.
Oh, I mean, the Marks people
folks
were doing
and
it.
the Motorola engineers that came with them.
And the police department didn't have an issue with it?
The police didn't come. They didn't make any issue. They didn't make a statement of any kind that I know of.
Okay.
So, in the context of what...
Now, what he's not saying is the police didn't come because the police like Marks. Because it's interoperable.
You're asking, I never asked anybody's union to make a big issue out of it. I was told that...
That is a lie. In the email from Alan, it states because he was told the mayors bow down to union wishes, that they were going to leverage the unions against the mayors for the 5 cities program, which then he tried to do the same thing with the county commissioners later.
This was going to happen, and it did at that the first meeting in July.
Okay. So, all right, just so I'm clear, when this whole thing is starting to brew here, and North Ridgeville's got this, obviously this internal issue between their fire and council, you never made any overtures to anybody to say, hey, you need to rally the fire chiefs and the unions to tell the powers that be, whether the county or an individual city, that hey, we don't want this mark system. We want to be on the Harris system. You had never anything to do with that.
I talked to Jeremy Betza, the fire chief at Avon Lake.
Okay.
And I said, can you reach out to Commissioner Lundy? Jeremy Betza has been a proponent of the project from the get-go.
Okay.
In an effect, in one way or another, it was his baby. And
He's the one that kind of
he started the process.
sowed the seeds for this.
Right.
Okay.
So he reached out to Commissioner Lundy and asked them, hey, can you help make sure this happens?
For the 5.
Well, not for the 5 cities. That's more.
Oh, that's interesting tidbit I just caught is that Betza, probably during Lundy's campaigning for commissioner that he lost, reached out to Lundy regarding the county for help.
More of a countywide
Okay.
request
All right.
that he
Fair
made.
enough. Okay.
Any others? I've had numerous conversations with John Reese, the fire chief from North Ridgeville.
Okay.
He calls me, or I'll call him, and we talk about what's going on. He has a relationship with Michelle Hung,
Okay.
a long-term friendship, I believe, from when she was the
Councilperson.
councilwoman in North Ridgeville.
Okay.
So he has a natural friendship with her.
Okay.
So If he's reached out to her and talked to her, that's on him.
Yeah, I understand it. I'm not asking you about what other people are doing. I'm just specifically what you were doing or not doing. Okay, so they make this presentation, and then what happens after that?
The second presentation?
No. You say that you made your presentation to the county. This issue with North Ridgeville is going on, and then at some point after that, what happens?
Let's see, that would be probably.
Because at this point, the 5-city thing's not up and going, right? I mean, it's set up, but it's
in
not.
the process of being installed. It was most of last summer.
Okay.
It went on the air.
All of his contracts were signed by July of 2021. So, for specifically the 5-city project.
November of last year.
Okay.
So it would have been June, July, August. We were gathering all the parts, ordering all the things that year.
Okay.
Now, I have to interrupt again. Just to remember, he was, he did not get the system up and running until November because he had to sign a lease agreement in October that was stalled. When the fair ship blew up, they held that lease agreement from July to October. They were also negotiating a response, and I know exactly where this is, so I want to show it real quick. Text messages, screenshot. You see all these documents I go through, and if anybody tells me I don't do my own ish, I'm gonna punch them in the face because I read all this shit. All right, here's a screenshot. Who is that? Commissioner Michelle Hung? Hold on, download this real quick. Just so I can zoom in for you guys so you guys can see it. Shh. He reached out to Amy about more and she says he's not interested. I think he got the shrug. But July 31st, tower lease. She texts him, a copy of her tower lease on her laptop. It wasn't passed until October because this is at the time, July, that weekend in July, she went into executive session and had to discuss her affair, which is bad. By the way, you guys, I got like 5 minutes on this and then I'm gonna have to cut it in half and we're gonna finish this interview up this afternoon because I have to cut this lady that has Stroke's hair and I have to leave to get to my aunt's house here shortly. So it's just going to be, if you join me on the live, it's split. If you're on the on any podcast platform or my website, this will all be one video.
So it would have been June, July, August. We were gathering all the parts, ordering all the things that had to be ordered, securing the financing from Dollar Bank, and got all the things that I needed to get straightened and putting it in the process to get it out of the admin building. In that meeting, presentation, there was a meeting at the one I told you about that Commissioner Moore was at when we were on the 4th floor of the admin building. In that meeting, he's asking the questions of Steve Haberman, and the questions and his body language told me that he was not a proponent of the county joining the 5 cities. Just
Negative. He was not a proponent of a $6.4 million no bid contract, regardless of the reason.
For what reason?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I read body language, I read personalities, and his personality and body language were, that ain't happening, from him.
Did you interpret that to be because of an issue with just the project in general, or was it an issue of policy and procedure? Meaning, was he upset?
point.
Was he upset? It wasn't. Well, I guess. Do you characterize that as saying that he didn't want this countywide project as a project, or was he upset with the process?
I would go back to the second presentation that we made prior to that, where it was him and Commissioner Lundy that were in the presentation, and Michelle Hung didn't make that one. Mm-hmm. The questions being asked by Commissioner Moore were all, because of my 32 years dealing with Motorola and the Marks people, I recognized the questions, and I believe all three of the commissioners were at a Mark's presentation that morning.
Okay.
We were in the afternoon, and the questions coming from him were all Mark's type questions.
Okay.
We answered them and gave him every reason to go with our idea, and then couple that to the way he was acting in the meeting on the fourth floor. Those two tidbits of information told me that he wasn't interested in a Harris solution for the county. Whether he was okay with Motorola, I can't tell you.
It had nothing to do with the Harris solution, Motorola solution. Really, he didn't want to spend the money, but then he was forced into a county-wide, district-wide 911 system, which ultimately, he went with Mark's. I think he was asking interoperability questions like, would your Harris radio system, quotations, be able to interact with Mark's easily? No. Would I be able to interact with the police, highway patrol, this one, that one? No. Are we purchasing radios while you use all of our city tax owned equipment, which I believe is fraud? Yes. Would Mark's be making an investment in the county? Yes. So we're gonna end up there. We're at 27:04, and we're not gonna listen to every interview like this. I just think Alan Close, since he is the main guy at CCI, and this interview gets worse, we need to listen to him. So I will be on, I gotta pick up 6. I'll be on about 8 o'clock tonight. And we're gonna finish this. Like I said, I have promised my aunt I would cut this lady's hair, and I am going to go do that. She had a stroke, and lying in bed and stuff, and hair is not fun. And I went to Aveda, so I am gonna go do a good service today and go cut in a 96-year-old woman's hair real quick. So if I get back before I have to run another errand, I'll come on and wrap this up. But those of you joining me live, tune back in tonight, and we are going to finish it. The last of this interview is the best. And I will talk to you all soon. All right. Stay focused, Lorain County, and I will see you tonight to finish Alan Close Up. Thank you for joining me today on Mean Street. I hope you enjoyed the show. I would greatly appreciate it if you would consider supporting our work and supporting my effort. You can support directly underneath at the Spotify donations, or you can directly give a donation at paypal.me/Mean Street, Ohio. Any donation received will help me continue to provide news to you and everyone else across Ohio and beyond. I love what I do, and I just hope to continue to do it. Thank you so much, and you have a wonderful day. Thank you for joining me today on Mean Street. I hope you enjoyed the show. I would greatly appreciate it if you would consider supporting our work and supporting my efforts.